and welcome back. This video is about gameplay effects, what they do, and how they're applied. Gameplay effects are a blueprint class that is used to apply modifiers to attributes. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Thank you for helping me help others. To start, I'm going to create a folder for the gameplay ability system components called gas. In here, I'm first going to create a gameplay effect, which is a blueprint class. We can do a search for gameplay effect, and it is the top one here. Call this GE underscore tower attributes. And when you pop open a gameplay effect, you get all the stuff over here on the side. So the first thing of note is a duration policy. So there are three options: instant, infinite, and has duration. Instant is, instant. It is generally for applying attribute changes like damage or healing. And in this case, it'll be a gameplay effect, which is instant, and it overrides the base tower attributes. Infinite and has duration are very similar. They both have a duration where an infinite is just, duration that does not end. They're the same in the sense that they both get attached to the ability system component they're applied to, and then they're an active gameplay effect, which can later be modified to some small degree and also removed. So infinite, for example, might be for gear that you put on and it applies some stats. You can set them as infinite, and then when you remove that piece of gear, it would just remove that gameplay effect. Has duration, obviously it's for anything that has a shorter duration. You can make that effectively as long as you want. You can remove it the same way as the infinite, and then when it times out, it just auto removes. So in this case, we're going to do instant. We then have components, modifiers, and executions. I'm going to talk a little about modifiers. So I'm going to add a single modifier. For the attribute, we're going to use our TD set range. We're going to pick override, and then in modifier magnitude, we can set a value. So let's set this to 500. We'll add another one. Similar process, it will be override. It is for the fire rate, and we'll just set this to 2. Our last tower attribute is damage, which we set to override, and we can set this also to 5. That's good for now, so as a reminder, I'll hit play. Our tower is just spitting out that it has a range of 100, fire rate of 1, and damage of 10. So if we go into our tower, and we look for our default effect, that's what this is for. It's for the initial attributes that we're setting. We just choose the GE that we just created. And then when I hit play, it uses the updated values, 500, 2, and 5. So that is one way. You saw in the C++ code a few videos ago that it's taking the default effect and applying it to the ability system component. We can do the same here in begin play. I'll drag out the ability system component, and we can just do and apply gameplay effect to self. Choose that same gameplay effect. Actually, just to make sure, we'll show the old values again, 100, 1, and 10. Hook that back up. And it's not working. So the reason why that is, so it's not working because I put it in the wrong spot. Printing out our values, and then we're setting the value. So let's reverse this. Oop, too far. And there we go, back to 500 to 2 and 5. Since that was an instant effect, it just overrides and then stays forever. If we were to set this to duration, set a duration period of 2 seconds. We'll go back in here. I will copy all this. Actually, I'll cut it. I'll put it down here for tick. When you print a string in tick, you really do not want a duration. So there we go, we hit play. It's showing our 500, 2, and 5. And 2 seconds after, the gameplay effect went away and the values reverted back to what they were. There are a lot of other things you would use gameplay effects for. So let's look at another one or two of those. So I'm going to create another gameplay effect. This one we'll call it GE damage. And in GE damage, it's also going to be instant. It will have a modifier. In this case, the only thing we have damage that will be applied to is our enemies. So we can apply to our enemy a negative value. So we don't have an enemy set up with this yet, so I don't have any way to show it. But this would do the same thing as before. You would apply this gameplay effect to an enemy, and that would just subtract 5 from the health. If we also wanted to have one for damage over time, we can create that. Let's call this G damage over time. So similarly, this would be a duration-based effect. Let's say we give it 5 seconds of damage. There's going to be a period value. So if you want damage applied once per second, that would be 1. We add our modifier. It's similarly going to be health. And we're adding negative, let's say -2. So that'll run 5 times over the 5 seconds and do a total of 10 damage. Now there's a few other things you can do with some of these things. We're setting our attribute to a scalable float. Back in our damage, what's actually going to be happening is a tower will be, well, the basic gun tower will be shooting an enemy, and it will do damage based on the tower's damage value. So in this case, we can use attribute based. When we do that, we then choose the backing attribute. So this will be our tower set damage value. And we have an attribute source here. So now this effectively means that we have to have both a source and a target, the enemy health here, for this kind of thing. So it will be applied a little differently. Instead of just calling apply gameplay effect to self, this would be apply gameplay effect to target. And while it has 2 lines that say target, target, the source is the top one, the actual target. This will be the enemy in the bottom one. And similarly, we would choose our damage. And we'll do that in a future video as well. So for now, I'm going to revert all this. We'll go back to using the default effect. And lastly, we have our GE damage. The damage coming in is attribute based. We could also set this to set by caller. So what that means is we then have a set by caller magnitude, which is based on a data tag. So for that, we need to create a tag here. We'll just call this damage dot set by caller. Click the add new tag here. After we check the source file or select the source file, then we check this. And now that value will be based on this. So to do that, we would then have, in this case, it will more closely match the C++ code, which was following the logic of make outgoing spec. For the outgoing spec, we're choosing our gameplay effect. This will create a gameplay effect spec handle structure. And with that, we then call assign tag set by caller magnitude. And then we choose the data tag that we created, damage.setByCaller. And then we could set the magnitude value here. And then that value can go in here. And then lastly, we would again use our apply gameplay effect, in this case with a spec, to target. And this is the spec. And then this would be the enemy target. We'll go through over the damage portions again when we add enemies. But thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.